2 minutes until showtime.
The national parks are a great place to learn and to engage with the human identity through history.
The Subaru Share the Love event has donated over $6.5 million to help the national parks.
Put a little love in your heart.
Until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Trucking with Authority, and for the next hour, consider me your navigator on your journey to success. My name is Kenny Long, and I am here to help you have a better, brighter, more successful 2018. Big, successful, profitable, prosperous new year. Today is January 2nd, 2018. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm happy to be back from a fantastic week-long holiday season. It was fantastic. It's great. Watching the trucking market this whole time has been fantastic as well. A lot of great stuff going on. So let's get to it. I have, I keep saying it's a perfect storm, and there's just more and more happening that are just driving the industry in a positive way. Just so many things. Market, the capacity is tight. Tighter than I've seen it in a long, long time. If you're an owner-operator, if you're a carrier, even if you're a driver, that means there is plenty of work to go around. So that is a great thing for the trucking industry. Fantastic. Freight rates are through the roof. Freight rates have not been this great in decades. Over the past few years of doing this show, I always use 2014 as a benchmark because 2014 was a record-breaking year. We are exceeding those rates. Fuel prices are about $1 a gallon lower now than they were in 2014, but we're still seeing rates that are actually at or above what we were seeing back then, which is awesome. As fuel prices go higher, the cold weather that's on us right now, that will drive fuel prices up. Rates will get better, with the fuel surcharge to offset that. And we're just, if you know how to take advantage of fuel savings, right now, if you had a truck, you fall out of that truck into a pile of money. It's pretty awesome. We are in the best market in the transportation industry, especially in the trucking segment, that we have ever been in. Now, as carriers and drivers, owner-operators, that's fantastic, but there's also a lot of opportunity out there right now for brokers, freight brokers, because a lot of shippers are looking for solutions to their problems. And a good broker right now will be able to find that solution. and they may be able to get the carriers better rates and explain to the shippers what it's going to take. And that's the market we're in right now. We are in a market that does favor carriers, but a good broker can take advantage of this as well, and everybody makes money. It's fantastic, the market right now, just awesome. Now all of this is driven by supply and demand. So if you look at the reasons it is in our favor for supply and demand, the list gets longer. So right now, of course, we have the ELD mandate, which has been on us now for a couple of weeks. Happened December 18th, was just a week before Christmas. Now, typically, the week before Christmas is when most of the package delivery, the UPS, FedEx, those types of things, DHL, Amazon, those things go really strong from Thanksgiving right up until the week of Christmas, a week before Christmas. Then they start to taper off as those deliveries are making their final mile delivery destination delivery. So the week before Christmas, typically we see things start to taper off. We hit the ELD mandate the week before Christmas, Monday, December 18th, and rates stayed steady right through the holiday season, which was awesome to see. Now, there are brokers that are not prepared for this, that don't know what's happening right now. This is why I study rates so hard, because if you do study rates, a broker that is studying the market and knows what's going on is not being caught right now with their pants down, so to speak. Brokers that are not studying this and not paying attention, that have been over the past few years surviving on just getting the cheapest truck off of the load board, they're bidding too low to the customer, and they don't understand what's going on. They're taking the rate information from history from the past 30, 60, 90 days, and they're bidding today's rates on that. But rates are going up. So historical information from 30, 60, 90 days ago is irrelevant. So brokers don't know what's happening when they're bidding rates and lanes on today, what they think is the historic trend for that lane, and they're getting hit with quotes from carriers that are $500, $1,000 or more higher, and they don't know why. Now, the same thing can happen to carriers, of course. Carriers, if you're quoting your loads right now off of historical information, remember, it's averages over the past 15 days, 30 days, 60, 90 days. Those averages are going up, which means whatever the average was last week, you're probably going to be higher. So if you're quoting those loads on old information in the trend that we're in now, it's going up. Now, if you notice, I'm wearing a sweatshirt today. I am in Orlando, Florida, and it is 50 degrees. And I'm sure a lot of you are cussing at your phones or radio or computer or whatever you're watching me on, and you're telling me that 50 degrees is hot bathing suit weather compared to where you're at right now, because I see across the country we're looking at single digits or negative numbers on the thermometer right now. Across the country, even here in Florida, it's 50 degrees. When we get into nighttime hours after dark, we start getting into possibly freezing temperatures here, and that's unusual. Now, I'm in my office. I'm wearing a sweatshirt because it's so unusual here in Florida that many buildings, including my office, don't even have heat. They don't use it. There's a few handful of days out of the year that you would need heat. So buildings don't even have heating, furnaces and heat strips and all this stuff. They don't even build things down here with heat because it doesn't happen. Florida is being caught off guard, but so is the rest of the country, because even in the rest of the country right now, we are seeing below average temperatures. That's a good thing. I referred back to 2014 a little while ago. 2014 was record-breaking rates, and the springboard for that trend was a severe weather cold snap that happened in January and really tightened up capacity all of first quarter. Now, first quarter, usually right after Christmas, we've got trailers being relocated from the Christmas rush. We've got a few things still happening that got pushed past the holidays. So usually the first few weeks of January, tend to be decent with rates, and then at the end of January and into February, they dip. But right now what we're seeing is a similar trend to what we had in 2014. We came in really better than 2014. 4 to 6 months ago, we started seeing rates. Mid-2017, we started seeing rates on an upward trend. If you look at all the graphs of the rates, you start seeing these upward trends. And that's been happening for months. Came into the Christmas season on a high trend right now. ELD mandate hit just before Christmas. That will tighten capacity, whether it's drivers that just go out of business, whether it's carriers that shut down, drivers that might be protesting, whatever the case may be, or simply just drivers that now have to follow the rules. Granted, a lot of drivers are upset about the ELD mandate, but it's driving rates up. You can't complain about higher rates. So however you feel about the mandate itself, the rates that we're seeing as a part of that are phenomenal. And I'm thrilled to see it. So rates are great because of that. Now we have this cold snap on top of it. So we will start seeing things like cleanup situations as pipes freeze and break in the Midwest for states that are not prepared for this extreme cold snap. You'll start seeing flooding and water damage, and you'll see these cleanup crews coming in. You'll start seeing emergency relief and fuel. As I mentioned a minute ago, fuel prices are going to go up because of this, because a lot of homes are still heated with fuel oil or even propane, and all that stuff has to get trucked in. And it also reduces the capacity that's available. And if you don't know, fuel oil, a lot of homes are heated with number 2 fuel oil, which is essentially just diesel. If you go to the pumps, you see off-road diesel, it'll be dyed red, and it's the same stuff that you can use in your home to heat it if you have a heating oil fired furnace. So heating oil goes up this time of year, which drives up diesel prices. Diesel will be going up. That's going to drive up rates even more. Capacity is already tight. Now you tighten it up even more with the ELD mandate. Now you throw in additional work, because not only do we have the cold snap driving up rates, from the diesel fuel, you also have all this emergency relief coming in, which is a similar trend to what happened in 2014. Perfect Storm? I'll tell you what, that movie they made, Perfect Storm, and we talked about 2 storms coming together. This is unbelievable. We have just one thing after another after another. Literally, our springboard for this whole event started at the end, end of second quarter 2017 with the literal perfect storms, the hurricanes. We had Hurricane Harvey and Irma and the one that hit the islands. All of that drove rates up from tightened capacity then. And now, as we went into the Christmas season, it stayed strong. Now we got the ELD mandate and this super cold snap and all these other things. I am excited to see what's happening for 2018. We're starting off strong, and I think it'll only get stronger. Not to mention the ELD mandate kicked in, but a lot of people still are not prepared for it. A lot of people are still waiting for their devices. They waited until the last minute. Even myself, all of my trucks have been on ELDs for close to 2 years, but I'm switching everybody to 1 unit. So I ordered some devices just to switch everybody over, and they sent me some of the wrong cables. There's some login conflicts and things like that. So a couple of my trucks didn't even get switched over yet. They're still running on their older system. And I know that there are people that don't have anything in place at all that waited until the last minute and are experiencing these same problems, don't have anything. And, we're looking at issues where they may be shut down if they don't get things rectified here in a few months. So April 1st is the phase-in deadline. Come April 1st, if you don't have the ELD, not only will you get the ticket and the fine, you'll also be shut down. Now, I've been saying it for a long time. If you are held up by a shipper or a receiver, you have to put a value on your time, and they have to be held accountable. A lot of people say that there's no way to hold them accountable. Now, here's the problem. 80% or better of the industry prior to the mandate was on paper logs or some version of an editable log. Now, the majority are on a log that really cannot be changed or fudged much. What that means is, prior to the mandate, there was not a lot of leverage to make a change with these shippers and receivers because there were enough people that could fudge the logs, and if you wouldn't do it, they'd find somebody else that would. So now we have to hold them accountable, and I do honestly believe that time will tell, but enough carriers, enough drivers and owner-operators are going to hold the pressure to these shippers and receivers that detention will be, they won't be able to question it anymore. I think there will be carriers, and now I've already experienced this on my broker side. If a shipper or receiver doesn't get the truck out in the allotted amount of time, the included amount of time, the truck just leaves. Detention or none, they just leave. And I think that that may be a trend in the truckload sector as well. Now, we are streaming live on Facebook. We're streaming live simultaneously on YouTube. And we are streaming live on Blog Talk Radio. So if you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to add, call the number at the bottom of the screen, 917-889-9924. This show, and we've got a few recorded shows, we're going to be rebroadcasting on Thursdays on L&J Radio. So check out L&J Radio if you missed this show or you want to listen to the replay. Or if you're driving, it's a lot easier to listen to the L&J stream rather than try to watch this on Facebook or YouTube. It'll keep you out of trouble and you won't be watching videos. So L&J Radio, check it out at TuneIn, and you can download the TuneIn app and find the L&J channel. Go to lnjradio.com. Also find us at Trucking with Authority on Facebook and the Trucking with Authority YouTube channel. Go ahead and pull up some of these streams here. I'll try to watch your comments as they're coming in as well. So let me hear your thoughts and comments about what the market is doing. What do you see coming out of 2018? Now, one of the things that really stemmed this entire theme or topic tonight was Overdrive Magazine. I saw this early this morning. Overdrive Magazine did a poll. And they said, and the headline was that the majority of drivers are disappointed or pessimistic about 2018 and what the outlook is for them. Ironically, that article was based on one single comment that was made. One single comment. In the article, it says that only one comment was made about this on their thread, and it was a negative comment. And that seems to be the theme that they took with their entire article. The funny thing is they mention that it's about equal with the people that are optimistic. So they said that the majority of people are pessimistic, but the same amount of people are optimistic about 2018. And I get it. I understand. There are a lot of people that are afraid of this ELD mandate. They don't know how to roll with the punches, and they're struggling with making the changes that are necessary, but times they are a-changing. We have to make it happen. I would like to hear what you are doing out there. So call the number at the bottom of your screen, 917-889-9924. Press number 1 once you get in. That will raise your hand, and we'll get you on the air. What are your thoughts for 2018 going forward, and what are your plans to take advantage of it? Looks like we have several people on each one of our platforms tonight following along. So if you have any questions or comments, I will possibly get to these at the end of the show, but it's very difficult for me to read the comments as they're coming in while I'm streaming live here. I'll try to read them toward the end, but if you have anything to add, anything you'd like to ask or comments you'd like to add about this, we're talking about 2018. It is a new year. We have a fresh start. Things are looking good in the industry. Rates are up. Capacity is tight. It is a carrier's market. If you are a broker, I know I have a lot of brokers that listen as well. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for you as well. If you know what you're doing and you know how to make things happen in this industry and be a problem solver, there's a lot of opportunity for everyone right now What are your thoughts? So go ahead and call the number 917-889-9924. Press number 1 on your keypad once you're in, and we'll get you on the air. So, a couple other things that are really looking good for us, and that is the economy right now. The economy is rocking. The economy, if you look at the stock market, we are setting records almost every week. It's going up and down like it always does, but over the past year, it has just, gone through the roof. Now, stock market is not a direct indicator of the economy, but it's a pretty good 30,000-foot view. When you start seeing people spending money on stocks and investing, that means that money's getting loose. People are willing to spend the money again. When people are willing to spend money, that's a consumer market. People are willing to go out and buy things. When people are willing to go out and buy things, that means more people will have jobs making those things. More of us drivers will have jobs transporting things. That's good for us. The GDP is up. We're seeing job growth. We're seeing, market growth in all segments. Everything is looking good right now. So the economy is rocking. Add to that, just before Christmas, the tax bill. That has been the topic of the week. I was reading everything I possibly could about it in the week that we had off here. The tax bill looks phenomenal for most people, really in any industry, any segment. Most people will benefit across the country from this tax bill, which means more people will have more money in an already consumer-friendly market to spend more money on more products for more of us to haul for, again, more money. You can't complain about that either. Now, I am not an accountant, and I don't claim to be an accountant. I know the basics of how this bill will affect people. If you have any questions or comments on that, I'll do my best to give you the very broad terms of what this bill will do for us. But I've been reading all the comments and threads on Facebook and everything else that's going on, and there are people that claim to be tax advisors and accountants and all kinds of things that are giving advice on stuff that really nobody understands yet. So, I'm seeing spreadsheets and different information that's being put out there. I do believe most of it will be relatively accurate, but right now, some of the biggest accounting firms in the country won't even make statements on this bill yet because it's, we're talking about thousands of pages of code here that they have to read through. And tax is already so complicated. Tens of thousands of pages in the IRS code, or maybe it's hundreds of thousands now. And this bill is thousands more. Don't take your advice from Facebook, even if people claim to be tax advisors or accountants or tax preparers. As a matter of fact, a tax preparer should not be giving tax advice. A tax preparer is a form filler-outer. They have a form, they put your numbers in the blocks. This is like fill in the blank, you do in elementary school. That does not mean they understand how to save you money on taxes. They don't understand the tax code. Be very, very careful with that. This is why a lot of people find themselves in hot water when they go to the H&R Block and so forth to get their taxes done. Works great if you're a high school kid and you have a W-2 and that type of thing. But when you start getting into itemized deductions and Schedule C's and doing corporate taxes and everything else, S Corp, C Corp, multiple businesses, taxes get way too complicated, and every single situation is different. Even I was looking today at different state level taxes and how this code will affect them. So people are giving advice now to be incorporating or LLC, and they're throwing out numbers. If you make this much or that much, what should you do? And that could depend, there's no blanket statement for everyone in the country. That could depend literally on what state you're in, because certain states have tiered taxes for the state level. So you really have to look at every single individual situation. Like I said, I can give some basic broad comments about this tax bill. I am not going to give any tax accounting advice or any legal advice. I'm not qualified to do that, and I have yet to see anybody on any social media platform that is. So be very careful. And yeah, I'm reading some of the comments. I got to be careful not to do that. I don't want to get too sidetracked here. All right, so got a couple of phone calls on. Elizabeth is in the other room screening the calls now. Going to jump to, turn my phones on here. We're going to jump to, we'll go to Chris in Utah. Chris, welcome to the show. And how is it in Utah today?
Hey, Kenny. Pretty good day today. Got a pickup truck on and another LTL and got out of Utah for pretty good. I'm really looking forward to 2018. I think that the ELD mandate is really going to help us achieve our, make it a lot easier to negotiate to get a daily rate out of everyone, something that's reasonable.
I agree.
This was
And you said something about a daily rate. And I know, and Chris, just so everybody knows, you are leased to me under Patriot Star. And, you know, you mentioned daily rate, but I do want to caution people to be a little careful with that because we don't want to just cover just a daily rate. We also need to cover our variable expenses as well. But putting putting a dollar figure on your time is more important now than it ever has been.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm only clarifying that because a lot of people will hear me say something about a daily rate or something to that effect, and they think that I'm only looking at a daily rate, and absolutely not. We have to look at all of the numbers, but I do think it's important to have your minimum daily rate to cover your fixed expenses, no matter how many miles you drive, and then have your variable rate from there. But I honestly do think that now that we have a forced mandate for our time, we have to take that into account. And absolutely, we'll see more people and more shippers, receivers respecting our time because they have to. There's nobody else that will do it. They can't find the next guy that can fudge their books or that's willing because everybody now is on, and it's the buzzword, it's a level playing field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I noticed that looking at the DAT board today. I mean, it was pretty stagnant out here, but when things started rolling in, there wasn't very many trucks in the market, and as you can tell from that pickup truck, it was pretty easy to name your price to get out and get moving.
Yeah, and
I was just because I was worried about it because what I saw coming in on Friday, it was just dead. I saw loads from Thursday, same loads on Friday.
And, between Christmas and New Year's, especially when they fall on a Monday, that makes things difficult. And even this week will be a little off from the usual because the holiday was on a Monday. So Tuesday, today was really the first business day of the year. And, over the past week, a lot of businesses were shut down or taking their holiday vacation or just running a part-time schedule, not shipping all that much. And last week, you'd see stuff that was posted, but they were not in a hurry to move it because, shippers and receivers, if you're shipping something and the receiver's closed, it doesn't much matter. So there wasn't a lot of priority to get anything moved during between the holidays. And you see that happen every year. But when the holiday falls on a Monday, it really shoots the whole week. So that entire week was out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back on Tuesday today, people are just getting back to work. They shipped everything they could, emptied out their inventory by the end of the year. And you'll see these trends every quarter. So at the end of, every third month of every year, you'll see a big push to get stuff off their books for the quarter. And then the first day or first week you come back, you'll see things a little slow. Now, at the end of the year, You know, everybody pushed to get everything out the door before Christmas, and then they had a week of time to get the last minute stuff done. There was no big rush. Now we come back, inventories are down because they pushed to get it out, get it off their books. They're going to start cranking up the presses again. We'll start making some products this week. Next week, we'll start seeing things happening again. So, you know, that's, you know, pretty typical for this time of year. But even looking at this time of year, when you're looking at capacity, we're still seeing most markets that are for a van, you know, and I always use van because it's the lowest of the three segments. You know, we're still seeing, you know, 8-to-1 across the country on average. You know, we hit records in the van market of over 10 loads for every one truck across, you know, national average. That's amazing. I mean, that's a record. It's never happened before. So that's a good sign.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what the receiver was telling me this morning. He was so glad I picked this load up on Friday because he told me it saved him like hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital.
Yep.
Because I was able to pick that load up for him before the end of the year.
Right. They can get it off their books, you know, and it's probably an FOB, you know, at the origin type of situation. So as soon as you picked it up, that shipper no longer owned it, and they can take it off their books, and now the receiver owns it. And, you know, so absolutely, you change the hands of the inventory, you level everything out on the books, and that's what a lot of shippers try to do at the end of, and they do it at the end of every quarter because that's how they do their bookkeeping. But then at the end of the year, there's always a huge push to get that off, especially, again, we had this huge tax bill, you know, put in place, and people that, you know, may have been holding on to inventory or waiting to see what happened. And then they pushed it out the door last minute just to make sure that they could take the advantages of everything they could. So, you know, absolutely, it does make a big difference.
Yeah. No, I'm not being too talkative. I was just backing into my parking space for the night.
All right. So what are you thinking for 2018? We're looking good, right?
I think we're looking really good because, I mean, ELD's really fixed a lot. I've been seeing a lot of those truck to load ratios, and I think it's going to fix a lot of the problems of people saying that, you know, I'll just make it work, or if I can just, you know, fudge this and get one more load in for the week because I had a bad week, it'll make it a good week. I think it'll make it so that you can actually get what you're worth out of the loads to begin with.
Right, and you know, for anybody that says that they're going to lose a load every week or whatever, what have you, that just means that you'll have to charge more for the others, and capacity is tighter. If every single truck out there was to lose a load every week, where are those loads going? Somebody's got to move them. You know what I mean? So I did the math, and I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say and I'm just going to go off of memory here. It's a little over 200, maybe it's 250,000 trucks out there. And if each one of them just every single day changed their logs and lost just 15 minutes because of an e-log, it equates to roughly taking 30,000 trucks off the road at the end of the week, right? So where are those trucks going? Or where are those extra loads going? So, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, so capacity gets tighter, and, you know, like I started the show with, supply and demand rules everything. Less trucks means tighter capacity. Tighter capacity means higher rates. And for those of us that know how to manage it, the higher rates go right to our bottom line.
Definitely. Definitely.
Awesome.
But,
do you have anything else for us?
No, the dog. It's her turn, and I'll go back on hold and listen to the show.
Awesome, Chris. Well, thanks for calling in. I'll put you on hold, and we will go to Les in Tennessee. Les, welcome to the show. How can we help you?
Hey, Jay. Something everybody needs to really remember is how the tax law should be the last thing you consider when you're making any decisions on your business. You know, it's the icing on the cake, the final verification that you're doing the right thing. You know, don't go out and buy a brand new truck just because you can expense it the first year.
Right.
If you don't need it and you don't have the revenue for it. So a lot of people look at the tax code, well, I got to do this for taxes. And really and truly, you can make some really stupid decisions that hurt your business in the long run by trying to play with the tax code.
I agree. And you know, paying taxes is not a bad thing. If you're paying taxes, that means you made money. Making money is what it's all about. Now, granted, we want to pay as little tax as possible on the money that we made, but you know, again, you have to make the money before you pay tax on it. So yes, absolutely, I agree. But at the same time, you do have, you know, if you can leverage business decisions, especially this time of year, and it's a little late now to make those kind of decisions. There's a few things you could still do. You can invest in some IRAs and things like that. You've got some time to still make a few minor things, but you know, most of the purchases and those types of things, you have to be careful and don't spend money to save money. That's the one thing that people don't understand.
Exactly. All right, Kenny, I love the show. Thanks a lot.
All right, Les, thanks for calling in. Now, one thing I want to just kind of expand on a little bit on Les's point. A lot of people, you know, he mentioned not buying something just because you need it for the tax write-off. A lot of people really believe that if you spend $1 buying something, you write $1 off, which means that's $1 that you don't spend in taxes. And that's not true at all. When you write something off of taxes, of your tax, you know, your 1040 or Schedule C or however you're doing your taxes, you write that off, you take that deduction, you're deducting it from the amount of money that you made. In other words, let's say you made $100,000. If you don't do anything, you finish out the year with that $100,000, you pay tax on $100,000. Typically, most people are in that 35% tax bracket. So $30,000 is your tax bill. You send it to Uncle Sam. You're left with $70,000, okay? A lot of people think that, well, if I spend $30,000, then I can save that $30,000. So they go out, they spend $30,000. Now their taxable income is $70,000. Now they have to pay tax on $70,000. And whatever the 30% is, it knocks them down to roughly 55 or whatever it is. So don't spend money to save money. That doesn't mean you're getting that money back. That just means you don't have to pay tax on that money that you spent. So just be very careful with that. Now, most people are not in a situation where they have any choice at this point. If you went out in December 31st and you bought a new truck or you bought, you know, a bunch of chrome that you didn't necessarily need, that money's gone, you can write it off, and that's the only way you can save now, but it may not have been the best decision. But there are a few investments and things that you could still make and still take the deduction on. But it's best, you know, there are price breaks and things on your taxable limits. And if you're right at that point, if deducting an extra couple $1,000s will save you a little bit of money on your taxes and you will come out better in the end, maybe that's where you want to be. But it's best to have all your numbers in order, basically fill out your entire tax form before you spend any money so you know exactly which way it goes. But Les is right. I mean, don't try to spend money to save money, and be careful making business decisions based solely on tax law. You have to have a business. You have to make money before you can save it. All right, so we've got 4 more phone calls on the line here, and Elizabeth is screening them now, so we'll get back to those. I'll let her screen them before I bring them on the air so I don't scare anybody. All right. Now, I have a lot of people making comments and questions on Facebook and YouTube. Well, not so much on YouTube right now. Let's see what's going on here. I will get to some of the questions toward the end, but if you have anything you'd like answered before the end of the show, call 917-889-9924. I'll take the questions off the phone lines first, and we do have several calls on here. All right, we'll get to those in a minute. All right, so now here we are, 2018, fresh start, a lot of decisions to be made. Which way are we going? What's our direction? And a lot of you were reviewing 2017 as we came to the end of the year. But as you were reviewing Did you start making plans for 2018? Now, I tell people, if you're going to reach a goal, you have to have a map. Anytime you go on a journey, it makes it a lot easier to find your way if you have a map. Having a map is only one step. Next, you have to know how to read the map. So when I say map, M-A-P, it's your massive action plan. In order to reach a goal, you have to have forward movement. You have to be striving to get there. You have to take action. You have to have a map. You have to have a plan in place. If you're building a business, that plan should be your business plan. But if it's a personal goal, it doesn't have to be just business. Maybe your goal is to just lose weight, or maybe your goal is to expand your business, or maybe your goal is to, do something with your personal home life, that type of thing. Buy a new car, put a swimming pool in this year, or whatever it is. You have that goal. I encourage you to form a plan. Massive action plan. Forward movement. So review from last year. Take the notes from your last year's review. Figure out what goals you made. Figure out where you're going from here. Set your new goals for this year. Now, I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions. I think any day is a good day to set a goal. But it is kind of, nice to have that feeling of it's a fresh start. So let's set our goals with a fresh start. We don't have to call them resolutions. Let's call them what they are. They're goals. Most people set these resolutions and they never follow through because they lose focus. A lot of people want to lose weight in January. They come off the holidays, they've gained all this weight. The gym memberships, it's funny if you turn on the TV and you start watching the commercials. I was at my parents' house for the holidays and we were watching football and stuff, and every other commercial was, a weight loss pill or some gym membership or some kind of a workout machine for home or some weight set or whatever it was, because everybody wants to lose weight in January. It's one of the most common New Year's resolutions. Come February, most people have already failed. They've already gone back to eating donuts for breakfast. They've already gone back to, they forget about going to the gym. Most people fail that goal within the first few weeks. Happens with every resolution unless you can stay focused. Now, to stay focused, I'll recommend a few techniques. First, every goal is easier to reach if your mind is always thinking about that goal. If that is the priority for you in your mind. Now, what I mean by that is, think about a kid on his, last day of school after he's been there, and wants to go, or going in for his final exam or something. That alarm clock goes off. That snooze button gets hit. The alarm goes off again. They hit that snooze button because they are not motivated. They are not excited. They are not focused. And the last thing they want to do is go take that exam. Goals should not be like that. When you set a goal, it should be something that you want, that you need, you have a passion for. It's what drives you. Like a kid that gets out of bed and that's the day that they're going to Disney World. They'll jump out of bed before the alarm goes off. Right? So when you're motivated and when you're focused on something that you want and you keep your mind on it, that kid probably didn't sleep for the whole week. Had to go to school, last week before their little Christmas vacation. There was a lot of that this week with, kids out of school. They all came down here to Florida, went to Disney World. And, I guarantee if they knew they were coming down here, they were excited. They didn't sleep. They didn't want to go to school. They just they were focused on that goal. In their mind, that's all they thought about. If it's something they don't want to do, they're not motivated, they're not out of bed, they're just dragging their feet, right? if we can keep our mind focused on a goal that we want, it's a lot easier to keep that forward momentum, the massive action that we need to reach our goals. So the first thing you can do is maintain your focus by getting your mind set, by visualizing, hearing it, feeling it, and understanding it, and getting emotionally involved in your goal. I don't want to get too far off track here. I wanted to stay, focused on the 2018 and what we want to expect out of this year coming up. But once you have your goal picked, write it down. Write it on paper. Read it to yourself. If you really want to take it another step further, when you read it, you see it. And when you read it out loud, you hear it. You literally hear yourself reading it, and you feel it coming out of your mouth. And if you do that often enough, you do that on a daily basis, you start to get emotionally involved in it. To take that a step further, find a picture of something that represents that goal and post it next to your bed. And every morning when you get up, you see it. If you look at that and then you read your statement, your little declaration of what your goal is, that will help you get your mind focused on what you need to do next. So that's just a little tip on how to stay focused on your goals. And this time of year, getting that focus can really change everything for the rest of the year. It really can. Now, one last tip on that. What happens after you reach your goal? Another reason a lot of people fail at reaching their goal is, and I've talked about this before, they will set a goal that's extremely high, and their expectation is, if I set my goal extremely high, then even if I don't get my goal, I'll get close. And it's still better than where I'm at. It's still forward movement. I don't hit it, but it's better than where I'm at. I think that's a bad way to do it, because you are setting yourself up for failure. Your mind is a powerful tool, and when you try to make it fail, you end up hurting yourself. So here's what happens in your subconscious mind when you do that. You say, let's say you set a goal for some extreme number that you want to hit. It's not even feasible, but you strive to get it, and you tell yourself, I know I won't get it, but I'll get close. Right there, you're telling yourself, I'm going to fail at this goal, but hopefully I do better. Right off the bat, you're telling yourself you're going to fail. Set reasonable, attainable goals. Set little action steps along the way, and every time you perform and you reach the little rungs of the ladder, so to speak, celebrate that. Congratulate yourself for reaching that next level. Don't just strive for something that you know you can't get and hope you get close. Set reasonable, attainable goals all along the way, along your plan. So you've got your map, you've got your massive action plan, you know your destination. Now find some landmarks along the way, is what I'm getting at. Find things that will help you get there. Then write your after story. Tell yourself what you're going to do once you reach the goal. My goal is to have $1 million. Why? My goal this year is to have $150,000 gross revenue to the truck. Well, why? What do you need $150,000 for? What are you going to use it on? Once you have $150,000, what do? What happens if you hit $150,000 by July? We're talking about how great the year is. What if it happens by July? Does that mean you just sit down on your butt the rest of the year? You hit that goal. What do you do next? What's your after story? Once you have an after story, when you look at your goal that otherwise you would have felt is unattainable, and then you start celebrating every step along the way, your mind starts thinking about how easy that goal will be to attain. It's all about perspective. And, my whole event in October was about perspective. And to take that a little, just to summarize that a little more, most of you now that have been doing this for any length of time can get in your truck, you can deliver a load with no problems. You've started a business, you can run a relatively successful business, and it's fairly simple. You're trying to strategically plan for the future, strategically plan to reach bigger, better goals. If you go back to yourself in high school, could you have stepped out of class and jumped into what you're doing today? Would it have been easy for you as it is now? Probably not, but that's all a perspective change. If you knew then what you know now, it would have been easy. But if you can train your mind to think past your goal will become easy. All right, so we've got some other calls on the line. It looks like it's Patriot Star Hour, so we're just going to go down the line here. We're going to take Jason in West Virginia. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kenny. My next big hurdle is to get into understanding the carrier packets, and with detention becoming a major issue, where are we going to be better off to guarantee our detention pay? Is that negotiated in the carrier packet, or is that going to be on a rate con on each individual load?
Okay. A lot of people want it to be in their carrier packet. A lot of brokers won't agree to that at all, especially now with the market the way it is. They're trying to protect themselves as much as possible. Most brokers, and for anybody that doesn't know, I know I get a lot of people at every level listen to this show. Typically, the broker supplies the contracts, which is a little backwards. You don't go to get your car repaired and then you give the mechanic your terms and conditions. Normally, the person supplying the service does that. Trucking industry is backwards. So the broker tends to supply the contract with their terms and conditions. Now, I've talked about it before. Myself and Elizabeth, we destroy these contracts. We redline everything, and we really go to town on them. But there are some things that brokers either will accept and won't. Most of the time, they won't accept when you lock in your rates because their customers may or may not. And mind you, if they have one customer, that's one thing. But most brokers are dealing with a number of customers, and you're not working on one contract, at least for their customer. So if they were to give you a load that was, literally everything they had in it, which right now, the way this market is going, if they literally gave you everything they had in it, they're losing money. And the broker really doesn't have a lot of leverage on what the shippers and receivers do other than giving them a hard time. But they can't go out there and jump on a forklift and make things go any faster. So it literally does come out of the broker's pocket. So getting it in the carrier agreements is nearly impossible. So it needs to be negotiated on every single rate confirmation. Now, I prefer to negotiate it on every single rate confirmation because I don't want detention at all, ever. I just want my truck back, right? So what you want to use, you want to use the negotiation for detention. You want to use that as a way to get more information. So you've agreed to the rate, and you ask, so how long does it take to get loaded or unloaded? And if they say, oh, it's quick in and out, you say, great, because I have other things this truck is committed on. I need $75 an hour, or $100 an hour, whatever the number is. I need $100 an hour. And if they flinch at that and they say, oh, I can't do that, I can't put that on the rate confirmation, then you say, well, why not? You just told me that it'll be quick in and out. And then they say, oh, well, I can't guarantee that. We've had some other trucks in and, and I don't know this customer very well. Well, you just promised me that it'd be quick in and out. So now you're telling me that we need to, think otherwise. So here's what we'll do. I would have done this load for you for, $1,000. I would have included, nothing is free time. I hate that term. Nothing is free. That first 2 hours to load, that's a reasonable time that I include in the rate. I'll include 2 hours, and then it's $50 an hour after that. Or if you think it's going to take me 4 hours, I will do it for $1,100 and there's no detention. You see what I mean? But now they have a choice. They can save money by just giving you hoping for the best with 2 hours and paying you $50 an hour after, or they can give you $1,100 up front. But what this really does is, not only does it guarantee your detention on one end or the other, it's going to get there up front. It's going to give you an indication of how fast this shipper or receiver will get you loaded or unloaded. And it's going to give you an idea of how strong their relationship is with this shipper and receiver. If they've never sent a truck in there, they don't have a clue. And, when you start asking them questions like that, that's when that'll come out. And then on top of that, it gives them some flexibility to take what would be the better deal for them. And then if they give you $1,100 and it only takes you an hour, that's better for you. So I prefer to do it that way. But, it's very difficult to get it in a carrier agreement. Getting on a rate confirmation is, in my opinion, a better way to do it because you also get the leverage of the negotiation and get the information.
And that's typically what I've used it as, is just for negotiation, because most of the time, when the freight I run is not the typical freight that is tied up day in, day out. And I know a lot of my customers, so I pretty much have my detention built in my rates. But I'm just trying to figure out how to ways to guarantee more, because eventually I am going to get stuck.
Right. And, it's a slippery slope because some shippers and receivers, they really don't pay attention. They really don't understand it. And it's really up to the brokers to educate them, because we don't talk to the shippers and receivers, directly. Not in this initial negotiation, we don't. So what the brokers need to do, and again, there are a lot of brokers right now that are caught with their pants down. They don't understand it. They don't understand why rates are so high. They think, we can run our trucks for $1.50 a mile. Why are we charging more? And we're charging more because we can right now, right? So the capacity, supply and demand, dictates that we can charge more, because if we don't do this load, good luck finding somebody else that will. So we can pretty much name our price right now. Same with detention. We can pretty much name our price. We can name our terms. And if they don't want to pay the detention rates, we can walk away. Other things that and I'll talk to all of you guys individually on this stuff, but, for the show here, we're also a broker, and we deal with LTL freight quite a bit as a broker. An LTL carrier, if they show up, they give you 30 minutes to either load or unload you. If they're not done in 30 minutes, they leave. No questions asked, because LTL carriers cannot do detention. They've got 10 loads on their truck, and they may or may not be able to deliver yours, but the other 9 people that are on the truck have to be delivered. They're expecting their freight today. So LTL carriers, they just leave. And I expect that more people in the industry for truckload are going to do the same thing. You show up, especially if it's something where it's an appointment time and it's scheduled, and then they say, oh, it's not ready. If the product's not ready, you booked a load that doesn't exist, we're leaving. Maybe you get truck order not used, maybe you don't, but at least you don't waste your time there and you go be profitable somewhere else, because there's, like I said, you could fall out of the truck and land in a pile of money right now. So if the rates aren't there, if they don't want to pay detention, they don't want to pay truck order not or layover or truck order not used, we just need to cut our losses early and just get out of there. Over the years, there have been several times I can think of. There was one time in particular that this was a learning experience. There was a team that was leased to us, and they went to pick up watermelons, and they got there on a Friday morning, and it was raining. So the field was wet. They said they couldn't load us Friday, but they would load us Saturday. So we waited all day Friday. They ended up waiting. They waited all day Friday before they were told. Then we laid over Saturday morning, still raining. Now, funny thing was, I live in Orlando. They were picking up in Florida. The broker was somewhere on the West Coast saying, oh, it's raining in Orlando or whatever. They can't load it. And I said, you know what? I'm outside right now in the sunshine, and I don't know what you're talking about. So that was their excuse. They did not want to pay attention. They didn't want to pay layover. They just wanted us to wait until indefinitely. And the drivers did it, because after they waited Friday, now they don't have a choice. There wasn't anything loading on Saturday. They were in Florida. What are they going to do, right? They really held us over a barrel. What we should have done was, after the first couple of hours, when we see that it's not going to happen, we should have just left. We didn't get paid for that time anyway. We should have just left. And I do believe that, that was a severe case. I do think that even on more traditional time frames, after 2 hours, if they can't agree to our detention, if they don't like 75 an hour or 100 an hour or whatever, even 50 an hour, I think 50 an hour is reasonable, but I don't think it should be much less than 50 an hour. If they can't agree to our terms, after 2 hours they leave, because otherwise they're literally stealing from you. Especially now with ELDs and the hours of service, we can't sit all day. Our profit clock is ticking. We've got to go. Once that 14 hours is ticking, they're burning our time that otherwise we should be making money. We've got to go. I don't want detention for the money. I want detention because they have a choice. They can either pay for the truck, or they can pay for an employee or another forklift or whatever it is to get the truck loaded faster. One or the other, they have a choice. If they can't do either, we got to leave. And I really think that's the way this whole industry is going to shift. I've already seen it happening on the LTL side, and I think it'll carry over to the truckload side as well.
Well, wouldn't it be? Doesn't this mean that relationship that you can get with a broker is going to become even more valuable, because they're going to be straight up with you if they know they can depend on you? Hey, this customer typically is 4 to 6 hours. I mean, right now guys are just trying to get some guys are trying to get all they can get, and they're not worried about the long-term effects.
Yep.
But while it's hot, I still think that the relationship is becoming that much more valuable.
Absolutely. Now, 2014, that's when a lot of this stuff started. My Trucking with Authority show started 2014. A lot of the Facebook groups that, we're all focused on rates and everything, rates and lanes, all this, all started roughly 2014. And I had a falling out with some of these people that were just, literally, I saw one guy, he was negotiating a load, standing next to his truck. He was getting visibly upset, punching the side of his trailer. I mean, he was just cussing this broker out, telling him what he would get. And the funny thing was, the market was so tight in 2014, even as rude as this guy was, they gave him his rate. But I promise you, 2015 came around, they did not use him again. So I agree that right now we need to get all we can within reason. I don't think we need to be burning any bridges doing it. But the market is what it is. Brokers need to understand that they need to pay us what the market justifies. If nobody else will do it, if they've got a load going to the middle of nowhere, nobody else would do it, and it's got to go. Well, we're going to give them the rate that it takes to get it done. So, we want to build those relationships. We want all the honesty we can. And I'm sure that since you've been on with us, you've seen how that relationship building process really benefits you.
Yes. I'm really starting to see it more and more now, as I actually have brokers calling me now.
Absolutely.
Which is totally new to me. I mean, 2018 is going to be a wild ride for the way I see it, for the way it's going for me.
Yeah, well, hopefully you don't run everybody else off out of embarrassment. We'll say that. But yeah, you're doing fantastic. So I know you're leading the pack right now, and everybody is you're setting the bar pretty high. So you're doing awesome.
I appreciate it.
All right, so
that was what I had. So like I said,
awesome, Jason. Well, thanks for calling in. I think I answered a couple of the other questions while I was on there, because I did see a couple of the other ones had things about detention and market capacity and things, and they fell off in the middle of that conversation with Jason. So I do see I got another caller on. Elizabeth hasn't screened yet. I'll let them get on here. We are at the top of the hour, so we'll wrap things up. Let me get into the comments here. I never trust Overdrive or OIDA. And the article that I was referencing earlier was an Overdrive article. And I like the opinion pieces out of Overdrive. I think they do have some good things to say. OOIDA has some leverage in the industry. They definitely have enough members that they've got some good discount programs, things like that. So I like that. I do not like the political agenda that they have. I don't think they're really focused on what's best for the industry. I think they're a little out of touch. But, you know, people join for different reasons. It's going to be good. Need some more snow and freezing temps. I think that it's a really good time to learn how to throw chains right now. I know a lot of people don't like that, but if you can handle driving in this bad weather, I think there's going to be a lot of trucks that are froze up or not able to make it through some of these areas. So I do think that the snow and freezing temps are going to be good for capacity right now. KR showing tax forms. So Kevin Rutherford, and he does have a group. Kevin Rutherford's got a group. It's no secret that I was under Kevin's wing for a while, and I'm on my own now. I still follow him, respect everything he says. And, you know, he's got a Facebook group. He's talking about taxes and things. He knows more about taxes than most other people that are in any of these forums and things. So, you know, I would lean more towards the things that he's saying and the advice he's giving. Be careful, because every once in a while I see comments that, you know, he'll make a comment that is a positive thing and informative, but the threads that follow get way off track. So again, be careful what you get out of Facebook or any of the social media platforms. And even, you know, he's showing tax forms and things, even some of that, and he's got spreadsheets and things. I've seen some of that. Every situation is different. Again, you know, he can, or myself, we can give broad advice, but it could vary depending on exact, you know, the different deductions you have, the states you live in, you know, as far as should you incorporate or S Corp, LLC, that type of thing. You know, for example, I was looking today at Tennessee because we're looking at some other investments as well. And Tennessee, for example, there is no personal income tax, but there is a 6.5% tax on interest and dividends, and they treat retained earnings from an S Corp as investment earnings, which means you get taxed 6.5% on that. That could be a game changer if you're right on that line. So should you file as an S Corp in Tennessee versus sole proprietor? Sole proprietor, you pay all that tax on that money, but 6.5%, let's say you made $100,000, you know, depending on how, you know, maybe 50,000 of that is going to be your retained earnings. Do you want to pay 6.5% on that, or do you want to take the whole thing as sole proprietor? That, if you're right on that line, a lot of times he'll say 65,000, or with the new tax bill, it's about $80,000. If you're right on that line, depending on what state you live in, it could make a difference. You know, should you make some of these decisions? So all of these things that you find in these groups, including what Kevin Rutherford says, or the other tax accountants that I've been seeing some of their groups and things, and I'm in several different groups for different industries outside of trucking as well, and they're all talking about this. All of this advice are very blanket statements, all of it. And it really comes down to your own personal situation. Now, things about per diem and how that will be handled, that's a little different, but it even, you know, everything comes down to your personal situation. And all the advice is simply just simply blanket statements on how it'll affect the majority of people. But if you are one of those that's right on the line of one decision or another, you need to look at more closely at individual factors. Okay, so let's see here. I ordered a trailer this year but won't be in service. Can I deduct it this year? No. If you ordered the trailer, you write it off starting in the year that you put it in service according to the tax code. So if you take delivery next year, now, if you put money down on it, that's basically a prepayment. So I don't believe you write that off from last year either. So it's going to be the year that you put it in service. Let's see. Lower your expectations for yourself so you'll never be disappointed. All right, so when I was talking about setting your goals, I would never say lower your expectations. You know, I close every show talking about dream big and aim high. Don't lower your expectations, okay? But understand that when you set a goal, if you set a goal that you can never reach, if you don't reach it, you fail. In your mind, you have failed at reaching your goal. If you set baby step goals to get you to that master goal, each time you accomplish that next rung of the ladder, in your mind, you have reached a victory point. And it's a mental motivation to keep you moving forward. I have read books on this. There's psychologists have studied this, and it's proven that if you set goals that you start off knowing that you can never attain, and a lot of people tell you to do this, set goals that you know would be on the far extreme of what you could possibly attain. And then every day you get up and you say, I am not going to reach my goal. I'm going to get close enough. Every morning you get up and tell yourself that you are failing at your goal. Every morning you get up and you tell yourself that you know before you even set your goal that you can't make it. And that it will mentally, psychologically drag you down subconsciously. You may not even realize it. You might think to yourself, I'll get close enough and that's still better than where I'm at. But subconsciously you think to yourself, I did not reach the goal that I set for myself. I failed. If you set attainable goals, realistic attainable goals, baby steps, you're more likely, even if, let's say you set a goal for $100,000 and you get up every morning and say, I am not going to make it to 100,000, but if I get to 90,000, that'll be close enough. It's still better than what I made this year, right? You're more likely, if you set that goal for 100,000, but then you say, by March, I'll have 250, or I'll have 25,000. By July, I'll have 50,000. By October, I'll have 75,000. And by December, I'll have 100,000. Chances are you'll actually get that 100,000 because all along the way, you're hitting goals and you're making it, and you're going to psychologically stay motivated and moving forward to reach your ultimate goal. Then go beyond that and form your after story. Why do you want to have $100,000? Because I want to move to the Virgin Islands. That's why. So when you get a chance to go to the Virgin Islands, take it. Take advantage of what you have earned and take advantage of setting these goals. If you have a chance to take a vacation for a long weekend to the Virgin Islands, and that's your ultimate goal after you get $100,000, take that chance and do it. I see so many people that I want to earn a bunch of money just to have money in the bank. I'll tell you what, money is green ink on crappy paper. It doesn't do anything good for you. But you spend the money on things. So, my ultimate goal is to move to the Virgin Islands and retire. If somebody told me today that they would give me a house in the Virgin Islands and I'd be set for life on the Virgin Islands, all I had to do was finish this show tonight, we're going to wrap things up right now because I don't care about earning money. That's my goal. Having money in the bank is not my goal. That's my goal. All right. Detention is horrible to collect, but it can be done. I agree. If detention is in the rate confirmation, you have a contractual agreement to collect it. It's a lot easier. If you cannot get them to agree to it or can't get on the rate confirmation, it's virtually impossible to collect it because you have no obligation to get it. So if there's no agreement to get it, if a broker says that they're not paying you, you cannot collect on it. There's virtually no way. Detention is not part of the line haul, so technically the detention is not something that you could collect on the bond. If it's on the rate confirmation, especially if you can get them to include it as part of the line haul rate. So in other words, it's $1,000, and this goes back to what I was talking about with Jason. If you can get them to include it, it's $1,000, or it's $1,000 for including the first 2 hours to load me, or it's $1,100 and I'll include 4 hours to load me. Now it's part of the initial line haul rate. Now you could collect it. You could file on their bond and collect it as well. All right, I have 2 independent contractors in the same area. Both of their trucks, my trucks leased to them, are froze up. They tried to save $50 for fuel, and one had a load, $3,000, 650 miles. The other had one at home delivery just 5 miles away. How to explain the driver sometimes it's okay not to save $50 because you can make $3,000 gross in one day. They're both still working how to start a truck the second day. I was hoping the great rates in the Illinois area because of freezing conditions. I guess it's karma hit me. I'm not sure where they saved the $50. I will say that a lot of people use various additives. I am not a fan of additives, even in these temperatures, because a lot of times these additives work against themselves. I saw a picture on Facebook the other day, had 2 of the most common additives out there. One is in a bright red bottle. I'm sure you know that one. And there's another one's in a clear bottle. I don't know how they thought those 2 would work together. But if you look on the back label of those 2 bottles, the first one in the clear bottle says it displaces water. What that means is that chemical goes in your tanks, mixes with the fuel, and there's water in your fuel. It takes the place of the water, makes all the water drop to the bottom of your tanks. If you use that over and over and over again, you end up literally with a puddle of water floating around in the bottom of your fuel tanks. Eventually, you could literally get pure water, as that puddle gets deeper and deeper, as you use more and more of this, that water could be pure water sucked right into your fuel filters, and then you're out of luck. Now, something to keep in mind, all diesel fuel has water in it. 50 parts per million is considered normal. So if you dump a displacer in there, 50 parts per million is not very much, but that displacer will make all of it drop out. And it will add up over time. Then, the red bottle, you look on the back of that, the red bottle says that it dissipates water, which means it makes it spread out evenly. It keeps it from, it breaks up the surface tension. It keeps it from coagulating and making big particles that would clog your filter. It dissipates it within the fuel. That's normal. Most fuel truck stops put that type of a chemical in there. If you have a puddle of water on the bottom of your tanks, then you pour that red bottle in that dissipates it, all of a sudden that puddle gets sucked up into the rest of your tank like a sponge, could actually make your problems worse. Now here's the problem with additives. I can read the back of those 2 labels when I buy them at the shelf, but what I don't know is what type of product or what chemical exactly did the fuel stop use when they put the tank, put it in the tank in the ground. If you use one or the other and swap them, they could counteract each other and actually make the problem worse. That's why I don't like to use any chemicals at all. If I have to, to go back a little bit, the fuel stops across the country, they treat their fuel for the region that they're in. But even Florida treats their fuel. Diesel fuel gels, I don't want to get too into this, but diesel fuel gels roughly at freezing point. But the gelling of the fuel is not typically what the problem is. Normally it's icing. So what happens is the little water particles, little water droplets, literally freeze and clog your filters with ice cubes. That's usually what happens. It's not actually the fuel waxing, it's little ice particles that clog your filters. So water is most of the problem, and that's what you have to control. Now, the other thing real quick is when you dump some of these products in there, if your fuel is already gelled, I don't believe there are any products on the market, regardless of what they say on the bottle, that will ungel your fuel. They will keep the water from freezing. They might thaw the ice. But if you think about this, the gel, when your fuel gels, it's wax. And if you take a candle and you pour some liquid on it, it's not going to melt the wax. You have to heat it to melt the wax. It's really the only way to do it. So once you actually have the wax forming, it's almost impossible to turn that around. Again, so anyway, I try not to use any additives unless I have to. If I have to, I look for one that disperses water, not one that displaces water, because most of the time the fuel stations use the products that disperse water because all fuel has water in it. So, and I could go into more detail. When I was in the military, when I was in the Army, I had the opportunity to work in a lab one time, and the Army uses different fuels. They use the same fuel. They use JP8, which is a jet propellant, which they use it in the helicopters. They use it in Abrams tanks. Abrams tanks, if you didn't know, have a jet engine in them. They use it in trucks. It's diesel fuel. It's the same fuel they use in almost everything. But because they have to use it in various climates, they treat it one time. So they have to use it in helicopters that are, going into high altitude. They use it on trucks and all over the different regions. And they have to use a fuel that always runs the best additive for all conditions. And again, it's a dispersant is best for all conditions. And I do know for a fact that when you mix different chemicals, even if you mix two dispersants together, there are some products that counteract each other and don't work well together at all. So I don't like using any additives if I don't have to. So what I do is I always try to buy fuel in the region where I'll be running. With the exception of right now, we are seeing like an extreme cold snap, and we might be dipping down below temperatures that they're treated for. The best solution there is to actually run number one, which is kerosene. Mix kerosene with your diesel. Kerosene doesn't have the wax levels in it. Or if you absolutely have to, use some type of dispersant. I like the one that comes in a white bottle myself, but there's a few out there that are dispersant. Just be careful of the ones that say they displace. And if whatever you use, if you've got one that's your favorite, try to always use it the same product. Don't use different ones. Okay. And you're welcome for all that. I didn't mean to get so off track. Just wish they kept their truck idling all night. It was negative 20 degrees. And yes, at some point, it's not just the fuel that's gelling up. Also you have the thicker oil in your engine, and, the cold weather is not good for your batteries. And, there's other issues that make it difficult for starting. So if it gets to a certain point, just keeping it running is probably a better idea. All right. All right, so E Street on YouTube says he's going to start with his over-the-road training tomorrow. His goal is 24 months, purchase his own truck and lease on with Patriot Star. Well, I will look forward to having you, and if you have any questions along the way, give us a call, and hopefully we can work together in the future. And 2018 goals: become debt-free, no tickets, no preventable accidents, and build savings. And those are great goals. That savings thing, and I'll wrap things up with this right at the end of the comments here. Make hay when the sun shines is the phrase. Right now, rates are phenomenal. I expect rates are going to be phenomenal throughout 2018. It's hard to predict what happens going off into 2019. I think it'll still be strong for the years to come. We'll see. I don't have a... Hold on. I do have a crystal ball. Funny thing. So I have my crystal ball here, but no matter how hard I look into my crystal ball, it actually won't tell me what's going to happen in 2019. So unfortunately, even with a crystal ball, you can't predict what's going to happen that far in the future. Hopefully, we're looking at rates that continue to stay high, but there is no guarantee on any of it, which means you're going to be making some decent money in 2018. I'm pretty sure that rates are going to go up for company drivers. You know, your pay per mile. I think you're going to see better detention pay come out of this. You're going to see rates for, you know, carriers come out of this. Brokers will be paying better, shippers, receivers. The whole market is going to change. The trucking industry is going to be making profits that are going to be setting records. Line your pockets. But be extremely careful not to overextend yourself. Do not go out and buy a bunch of brand new cars and a new house and a boat and some motorcycles and jet skis and snowmobiles and a whole bunch of toys, because come 2019, 2020, rates may plateau again. And when they do, you have to be prepared. So go back to your massive action plan. Look at your map. Look at what your goals are. Focus on your goals, but don't get carried away and don't overextend yourself. A lot of times after a market like this, if you look at 2014, a lot of people made a ton of money. A lot of new drivers bought trucks, became owner-operators. A lot of people got their authority. I started this show because 2014 was the best time in a long time to get their authority. The first line of the first show in 2014 of the Trucking with Authority said, now is the best time in a long time to get your own authority. For 3 years I did this show. I had a little voiceover intro, and that voiceover said that. Now is the best time in a long time to get your own authority. Stands true today as well. Now is the best time to get in a long time to get your own authority. Best time ever. Right now. Get it. Make it happen right now. Apply now. Get it set up. And be ready to hit the ground running, in March and April. When we come into spring, things are going to be rocking and rolling. Now is the best time. Apply and get it done. If you are on the fence, now is the time. But 2015 came along, and a lot of those drivers went out of business. A lot of those drivers went bankrupt. A lot of those drivers lost everything they had because they lined their pockets and they spent every nickel. And they set themselves up with payments they couldn't afford. They bought cars and motorcycles and toys, and they couldn't afford it. Don't live beyond your means. Now is a really good time, as E Street says, now is a really good time to pad your retirement accounts, set up your savings accounts, put yourself on a budget. When I talk about quoting a load and a lane, I always tell people, don't pay yourself, if you're an owner-operator or a carrier, don't pay yourself more than a typical company driver would make. So if you could replace yourself, if you could hire somebody to drive your truck for 40 cents a mile, 45, 50 cents a mile, if you could hire somebody to do it for 50 cents a mile, you are not personally worth $1 a mile just because you own the company. Budget yourself as if you were a company driver. Put the rest in the bank and keep it for a rainy day, because rainy days always happen. So always keep that savings account happy. All right, so Hugo says, my favorite channel by far. Thank you for all that you do and teach. And Hugo, if you haven't listened much before, I just kind of started doing the YouTube side. I think there's a lot of value in YouTube. I wish that these comments that you guys are all typing here would stick around after the show is over. That's why I always did it on the Facebook platform. I've got 2 more calls. I guess why not? I've always done it on the Facebook platform because I do believe that the comments are valuable after the show, but I continue to do this show for the accolades, for the thank yous. I put on my event, back in October. I did charge for that. I did not get sponsorship money. I don't have sponsorship money. I promote some things on the show, but I don't get sponsorship money for any of this stuff. Unlike a lot of the YouTubers are trying to go after sponsors, I don't want to make this a sales pitch show. I never have, and I refuse to go that route right now. So, thank you for sticking with me on these. All right, so we do have a couple of final questions. We'll go ahead and we'll get these. All right, we'll go to Kim in Arkansas. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kenny. How are you tonight?
Fantastic, Kim. Good to hear from you.
Well, good to hear from you. I hope you all had good holidays.
And you as well.
Thank you. My question is, and it's kind of a comment and a question. When you were talking about the detention and stuff, while
90
you said,
seconds.
that if you back up to at these shippers and receivers and you back up to a dock and they don't have the load ready and all this stuff, you just leave. Well, I understand that if you're at a shipper waiting to get loaded, but let's say, in fact, we had an incident last week that we had a 6 o'clock appointment at a receiver, and when the driver got there, he was 30 minutes early. His
60
appointment
seconds.
was at 6 p.m. He got there at 5:30, and when he parked in the lot and he went over to check in at the guard shack, they said, we are not accepting any trucks until after 8 p.m. Well, then why did you give me a 6 p.m. appointment? So anyway, kind of make a long story short, the driver ran out of hours because they ended up not calling him back to the dock until 9 o'clock. Then he asked the people inside, why did you give me a 6 p.m. appointment if you're not going to call me back until 9 o'clock? And the lady got hateful and said, we're just refusing your load.
10 seconds.
Anyway, law enforcement got called, and he was out of hours. And I asked him, ask the law enforcement officer, how can they legally ask you to break a federal regulation if you are out of hours? And the driver said, I'm not taking this load back to the shipper because it's a direct shipper load. It's not a broker load. And so the law enforcement officer said, this happens here all the time. You're not the first person. My suggestion is to pull back over here in the lot, even though he was out of hours and he shouldn't have moved his truck. And you should call corporate in the morning. So the driver called corporate first thing the next morning, and all of a sudden, miraculously, the load got unloaded. But the thing is, what I'm trying to get at, I guess my question is when you're at a receiver and you have their load on there, you can't just leave. So what do you do?
Okay. You got a whole bunch of...
And they don't want to pay detention.
You got a whole bunch of things on here. Okay, so first of all, when you said that
I'm sorry.
The law enforcement said to just pull back over to the lot. Did he have to go back out on the road?
Yes, because the place told my driver that he needed to leave, and he said, I can't, I'm out of hours. And they said, well, if you don't leave, we'll call law enforcement. And he said, call them. He said, better yet, I'll call them.
Okay, and then law enforcement had him go where?
Just right back to the staging area, which is right there, like right on there across the street or whatever. I mean, it was right there.
Okay. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, the regulations don't say you can't keep working, and you could move your truck around on the lot all night long if you wanted to. So you could work 24 hours a day as long as you don't drive out on the roadway. Driving across the street, I guess technically if he crossed the street, if he's in that public roadway, if he got in an accident or something, he'd be at fault because he's over his hours. But I'm assuming they're looking at that as he's not really leaving the property. He's just going, to their staging area. So you could be, on duty, not driving, or yard move is how the ELDs put that now, on duty. You're moving the truck, and technically the truck is driving, but you're on duty. You're not on the drive line because you're not out on the public roads. You can work around the clock. That's one,
Okay.
and I think you know that, but a lot of people don't understand that. They think that at 14 hours, you have to go to sleep. And that's not what the rule says. The rule says after 14 hours, you just can't drive anymore. And that means driving out on the roadways. So that's that
Okay.
part of it. The next part of it is when they said they refused your load. Now, you were in a situation where you couldn't go anywhere anyway because you're out of hours. This is a direct customer.
Well,
you said.
he wouldn't have been. Yes, he wouldn't have been out of hours had they taken him at his 6 o'clock appointment. He would have had enough time to leave because he had another load to pick up in the morning. He would have had enough time to leave to go to a truck stop to get his 10-hour break.
Okay. So there's a few different parts of this. First thing is when you have that bill of lading and that load is on your truck, for all intents and purposes, they say possession is 9/10 of the law. And when you have that bill of lading in hand, that freight belongs to you. You're responsible for it. So when they told you that they rejected the load, you have a whole lot of options. You have a lot of things you can do. Now, the customer is the shipper. Your customer is the shipper. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so...
But they had already taken his paperwork and they wouldn't give it back to him.
Okay. Well, that's the first thing that we have to be careful of. When, never give anybody all of your paperwork. You want to keep a copy for yourself. The load is yours until they get it off and they receive it. If they refused it, now once they told him that it was refused, the way the law reads, now I'm sure you have a contract with this customer and you've got a relationship to save with this customer, but the way the law reads, when they refused your load, you have a right to salvage, which means you could take that load around the block and start selling it off the street. Okay, you could sell it to somebody else. You can find another buyer. You own that load, okay, for all intents and purposes. Now, there's a lot of legal issues here, and this was a whole other show. But this goes back to the contracts that you have with your, if it was with a broker or with your direct shipper on how to handle that. Do you have a contract in place with them?
Yes.
Okay. Look at how claims are handled, how losses are handled, and it should detail something about how, a refused load. If the load is rejected, whatever the reason is, there has to be a way to, to rectify that. What do we do with it if the load is rejected? It could be rejected for damages. It could be rejected because they just don't like the way it looks. It could be rejected because it's Tuesday, right? Whatever the situation is, there's got to be a remedy for what the procedure is if the load is rejected. Now, the way the law reads, like I said, you have the right to sell that load to somebody else. You have the right to salvage, okay? And if you sell it, let's say it's they owe you $1,000 for freight, and you sell the load for $10,000, you get to keep $1,000, and then you have to give whatever the other benefiting party is the remainder of that. If you did that, I promise you that they're going to hire an attorney, and you're going to, have some issues. But you'd be on the right side of the law with that. Another option you have is you could take the freight to a storage facility. You could take it there, and so after 2 hours goes by. Now, this is at 6 p.m., so at 8 p.m., this might be hard to arrange, but you could literally take this to a storage unit, have it offloaded, go do your next load the next day, contact your customer and say, you're going to have to pay for redelivery. You could pay another carrier. You could pay me. They have to pay for the storage. They have to pay for the redelivery fee. They have to pay for all of it. By law, you're protected, and you would be able to do that. But this goes back to the rights that you waive in your contract with them. And I don't know, did you provide the contract to them? Most of the time when it's a carrier to shipper,
No.
the carrier does. Okay, so you're dealing with one of these shippers that operates like a broker where they provide the contracts. So the chances are the contract is in their favor. You probably waived a lot of the rights to be able to do all of these things. You're going to need to go back to the contract and see what options you have. In the future, you should or could talk to the shipper, your customer, and figure out how this is going to be handled in the future. Because obviously this customer, or the receiver rather, is not cooperating, and if you do this again, you need to figure out what the shipper, your customer, wants to do, and tell them right up front that you absolutely cannot do this without detention pay. If they don't want to pay detention, and you have to decide for yourself if that rate. Now, we certainly, I've had some of my drivers on here that do flatbed and things, and they are doing some loads that if it didn't pay detention, the rate that they're getting justifies not getting detention, okay? But you have to look at this particular load and decide, if I don't get paid detention on this and it holds me over a day, is it worth even doing this load? Because obviously they're dealing with receivers that don't really care. You have to decide what's best for you. It's a risk versus reward. Is this worth it? So look at your contract to see what options you have, then look to see what, in the future, do you even want to work with this customer anymore? Sometimes, especially in a market like this, if the customer doesn't want to cooperate, you need to fire your customer.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, it was a Kroger receiving. It was a Kroger distribution center.
Okay.
And we had an issue back. I don't know. It's probably been a month or 6 weeks ago. We were picking up a load to take it to a different Kroger facility. Well, in the meantime, while the driver was headed to pick up the load, the truck broke down. The shifter broke.
Okay.
So I called over to the Kroger facility and said, our truck has broke down. We will not be able to make this appointment. We won't be there. And we contacted the shipper and told him what happened. Okay, I thought everything was fine. About 2 weeks ago, I get a call from my shipper and says, oh, by the way, since we had to get someone else to do that load, and it was supposed to be there on the 19th, and it didn't get there till the 24th, Kroger is charging, I'm having to charge you back because they're charging us back $310.
Okay, so here's another side of this coin. Okay, here's another side of this coin.
But then when we...
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so
whenever I'm trying to get the detention from the other facility, now, their maximum detention is only $250. It's a double standard. If we miss our appointment, you charge us this astronomical thing, but you don't want to pay when you hold us up.
And that is where I'm going with this. The other side of the coin is the shippers and receivers are holding us responsible if we are late or if we hold them up or anything else. We, as an industry, have to start charging accordingly. We have to. And we have to start holding them responsible. Now, the reason that the shippers and receivers now are starting to put fines and penalties in, if you're, Walmart, if you show up early, they fine you. Okay? The reason they're doing that is because they are trying to make their appointments as prompt as possible. Now, when you're dealing with these warehouses that literally have hundreds of doors and they're doing hundreds of trucks at a time, prompt is, that everything's relative, right? So they're trying to cut their losses and make things move as quickly as possible. So if 100 trucks show up early, if they start receiving at 5 and they've got everything scheduled, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., and they've got a truck coming in every hour, but they all show up at 5 a.m. expecting a door, well, that screws everybody else up, right? If the 5 p.m. guy shows up at 5 a.m., well, the 6 a.m. guy gets delayed, and that screws everybody up for the rest of the day. So they have to hold people accountable to their appointments. If they do that, we have to hold them accountable to make sure we get in and out right, on time. So it goes both ways. I understand that the shippers and receivers are doing this because they have to start. They recognize the problem. Now, Walmart started, doing this about middle of 2017 because they saw this problem coming and they're trying to prepare for it. Shippers and receivers understand that there's an issue. They're trying to do what they can on their end to cut losses. They don't want to pay attention. So in order to keep from paying attention, they're going to make sure that the trucks aren't holding them up either, but it goes both ways. If they do hold us up, they've got to pay. We have to be stronger. It's kind of funny because I oftentimes as a carrier feel like the other guy has the upper hand, either the shipper, receiver, broker, because they just say this is how it is and that's a fact. And, what do you do about it?
Exactly.
Well, we need to start doing something about it. One thing we can do about it is we have their freight on the truck. we keep it until they pay us. We have a right to place a lien on it. We have, if they don't want to pay us detention and layover and so forth, we take the load and we put it in storage. They're going to have to pay. They're going to be pissed when you do that. And you're going to feel, they're going to threaten you with everything possible. Goes back to the contracts though. Okay. It goes back to, what you're legally allowed to do. If you waive the right to do that in your contracts, you can't do it. You're going to be held liable.
Right.
But if by law under the, U.S. Code 49, whatever, plus and the Carmack Amendment, legally you have rights to do a lot of different things, and the brokers and shippers know that, and that's why you have to waive all that in your contracts. Most of that stuff gets redlined in ours, and they try to kick some of them back, but we explain to them that if this is a problem, then maybe we don't want to work with you. So,
okay,
all right. So you need to look at risk versus reward. If their contract, if you've waived all these rights and this is going to be an ongoing problem, might be something where you need to just send it on down the line and find a new customer.
Okay. Okay.
All right. But you do have options as long as you didn't give them away.
Okay. Well, and I got Hank's book, and I've started kind of reading it, but some of that stuff, I'm like, oh, this is way over my head.
Yeah.
I don't really know what he's talking about.
Well,
and I mean, I'm trying to educate myself, but if it's over my head, it's over my head.
These are really good questions. If you call into Rico Muhammad's show on Wednesdays, he's still on the Audio Road Network. If you give him a call about once a month, Hank Seaton comes on his show in person. You could actually ask him directly, and he could break it down for you. So, I quote that guy all the time. He's fantastic, one of the best transportation attorneys. And for everybody, you mentioned his name. It's Hank Seaton, transportationlaw.net, and he's got a book that kind of explains all these different rights and contracts and things. So with that, I am going to put you back on hold. Kim, thank you very much. One final question. We are at 15 minutes to the top of the hour. So we'll take Dave out of Connecticut. And Dave, we're going to wrap things up with you.
Hey, Kenny. How you doing?
Awesome, Dave. Thanks for calling.
Got a question for you. So since I came over to work for Patriot Star, my numbers increased to the point that I'm keeping it looks like I'll be keeping about 51% of every dollar that I take in, which means I should net quite a bit next year. So, my goal is to save $500,000 by the time I'm 55, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm just starting, I'm a year and a half into being an owner-operator. I have a trailer that has a payment, it's at 12% interest, and I'm trying to figure out if it makes better sense to pay the trailer off with that chunk of revenue that I'm going to make next year, or refinance the trailer down to, like, right now it's at 12%, to refinance it to 4%, maybe pay a little bit off and take that revenue and do something else with it, either put it to work in the stock market or buy equipment and lease it out. What do you think?
Okay. If you can refinance and get down to that 4%, the other options might be a possibility. If you can't get rid of that 12% loan, paying that off is your best option. So paying off 12% is a lot, and you could, that is your best investment, is to get rid of that 12% expense. So that would be the first thing. Get rid of that, whatever it takes. At 4%, could you do something else with your money? Kind of comes down to the numbers. With anything else you do, there's other risks involved. I know you're talking about buying more equipment. You want to get into doing trailer leasing, that type of thing. There is risk to that. Could you earn more than paying off your equipment? If you can get it down to 4%, possibly. But again, the cost of one trailer versus multiple trailers, at 4% for equipment, you could probably do pretty good if you had a couple of different trailers out and lease those out. So that might be a good possibility for you. It's going to come down to the numbers. I think you need to create a business plan specifically about that. Do a little research and see what you could earn on those trailers. I know you've already started asking me questions about it. But figure out what your return would be if you were to buy other equipment, and figure out if it's going to offset that 4% or not. Chances are it will. At 4%, at 12%, I wouldn't even consider it. I would try to get rid of that loan as fast as possible.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking to get rid of the loan. But I'm also really interested in trying to figure out how to make money. Seems like everyone talks about making money work for them.
Right.
But you got to have that money to start with.
And, one way to think about it, though, is, at 12%, I see, factoring is when I get into this conversation a lot. So a lot of times people will factor, and I hear somebody factors at 4 or 5%. They'll factor at 4 or 5% monthly to put their money into money market accounts or savings accounts where they're getting, 10% APR. That's ridiculous. If you are going to take that money just to put it into savings, you shouldn't be factoring at 4 or 5%. 4% factoring, 5% factoring would be equivalent to 60% APR. If you're going to take it at a loan at 60% APR to put it into an account making 10% APR, that's dumb, right? And you got to think about the same thing with your trailer. You got 12% that you're paying. Could you take that money and, it would be hard to earn more than 12% doing any kind of investment. If you can get it down to 4%, what can you invest in that you're making more than the 4% on your money? Chances are, if you did like leasing or, you had other equipment leased out, one thing to be careful of, don't consider it mailbox money. Okay, we had somebody else that went through this, and they tried to buy a second truck, and they came to me and they said, it'll be mailbox money. It's, it'll just be out there running, and I'll just cash a check every week. Quickly found out that there's a lot more work that goes into it. A lot of phone calls, tracking things down. The equipment breaks, that you're responsible for those repairs. If you don't get it done to the right driver or what have you, and, it's risk. And it could turn around, and you can't quantify that up front. You don't know if you're going to get a lemon truck or a lemon trailer that's going to break down all the time. You don't know if the driver could have a perfect motor vehicle record, but it just happens to be his week and, and wrecks your trailer. And, you're out all that money too. So there's risk, and kind of like playing the stock market. You can put it in, riskier funds than others. Which one do you want to do? So it really comes down to the numbers and how much risk you're willing to take and the time that you're willing to put into it, because your time has value as well. And you're going to have to manage all this stuff.
So you think it makes better sense if you're going to make that kind of revenue, say 110 to somewhere 130, pay you off the truck and trailer so you have at least one unit paid off before you start expanding?
Again, if you can pay that off and get it to 4%, and then, if you could pay, if you had another trailer financed at, somewhere in that range, I could see having those trailers financed while they're making money, but that the return would have to be more than that 4%. So you'd have to do the numbers and see. Paying one off, if you had one cash and you had the other financed at 4%, or both of them financed at 4% and you owe half as much on them. So really it comes down to the numbers.
Sorry, Kenny, I just got a door.
Okay. Well, I will put you back. I'll put you back on hold. And I do appreciate the comments. Really, everything in business, everything comes down to the numbers. You got to make your decision based on the best return and the best risk for the situation you're in. Do you want to buy extra trucks and trailers and then take the risk of having the repairs and the breakdowns and things like that? Or do you want to put your money in a safe, mutual fund account where, you might be getting right, the way the stock market's going right now, 10+% interest on that right now. And then next year, maybe you want to do that, save your money for a year, pay off the trailer you have now, and do it again when you're in a better situation. So with the money that you're talking about, netting 110, or I think I heard you say, with that kind of money, I think you should be comfortable to do it either way. It really comes down to the risks that you want to take with that. So, all right. That being said, we got a lot more questions and comments on Facebook and YouTube, but I am out of time, so I am going to let that go. I'll see if I can answer some of the questions before the feeds cut off. So if you have anything you wanted to add, we'll keep these discussions going. Check out the Facebook group, Trucking with Authority. We've got this video live stream posted in all the groups and related trucking rates and lanes, motor carrier meetup, Trucking with Authority. I believe it's in the Truckers Coach. It's in all of the groups that I participate in. It's also, I've got the YouTube channel that I've been promising everybody. I am streaming live simultaneously on both platforms. So check us out at the Trucking with Authority YouTube channel. And you can find us also, you can listen to the recorded show on Blog Talk Radio. It's blogtalkradio.com/Trucking with Authority. And you'll be able to listen to the recorded shows on Thursdays at 7 p.m. on L&J Radio. So you've got a lot of ways to listen to the show and a lot of information out there. So any questions or comments, if you have any topics that you'd like me to cover in future shows, send me some messages through the Facebook groups, and I will try to get those answered. And I think that should do it for tonight. So thank you all for joining me. Talked a little bit about goals today, and I will finish the way I always finish. Remember, always dream big. There is no limit to what you can achieve if you put your mind to it. So dream big. Aim high. As big as you can dream, pick the goals that are at the top, because you can make it there. But you have to strategize your plan. The massive action plan. Move forward. You have to strategize, build a ladder, and figure out how to get there. And be flexible. But strategize your plan. And earn your success. And I heard somebody say it, they got to get out there and get what they're worth. None of us deserve anything. We're not worth anything unless we earn it. We have to earn our success. And I encourage you all to get out there and earn it. Earn your goals. Earn your success, because only you drive you. So have a good night, everybody.